right, Eric Stromquist and Ken Smyers. We are in Edinburgh, Scotland, on our way to Manchester, England, where the Smart Boating Controls Renaissance takes off again with the folks at EZIO. And Kenny, this is an appropriate place for us to start our on-the-road tour.
It sure is, Eric. This is Adam Smith, the creator, founder of Wealth of Nations, and just a marvelous thought, generated our modern economic societies that we live in, and we think that's a good segue into open systems, open buildings.
It really is, because without Adam Smith, we probably would have a closed economy. He was all about let the market decide, free market, as well as a ton of other stuff. But we are going to be walking around the city today, this sort of hotbed, if you will, of creativity, and it changed the world very much the way we think our industry is changing, the Smart Boating Controls Renaissance. We're so pumped up to see our friends at EZIO. We think Mike Marston's akin to Rousseau, who was one of the leaders of the Renaissance. Rousseau basically thought differently. I mean, the Renaissance, if you think about it, you had traditional ways of doing things, and they just said, no more, we're going to do it differently. So we got Mike Marston as Rousseau, a character Rousseau. Lim Hu Chat could be our version of
Leonardo da Vinci, say, for instance, because again, this is a matter of a core of engineering that has innovated and changed the world. The impact is enormous, it's global, and it's an appropriate beginning for the global conference, because this city here, for instance, is extraordinary historic. You have incredible people, James Watts, Mr. Horsepower, his name's on every light bulb. I mean, you have great writers or whatever. But
I know James Watt found the steam engine, right? And then Alexander Graham Bell.
He perfected the Newcomb steam engine by creating a separate chamber from steam. And then he also created the rotary drive, which led to all the big industrial revolutions.
There's our turbines, right?
Well, essentially, yes.
Yeah. And then Alexander Graham Bell, right? Hello.
Exactly. And then these buildings here are 400, 500, 600 years old, but we just overheard a walking tour that they have there. It's just a fabulous place, too, by the way. The people in Edinburgh are incredibly friendly. The food is great. But the buildings have so much intrigue to them. Like on the front side, they're 5 stories high. On the back side, on the mountain side, they're 11 stories high. So it's just you uncover so many secrets about great innovation. So that is a great starting point, the cradle of civilization. And from there, we're going to use that analogy and take it to the global conference in Manchester, England.
Yes, we are. We're coming for you, Mike Marston and Lim Hu Chat. Rock and roll. We're going to show you some more Edinburgh now. Come on, Kenny, let's go.
All right.
David Hume, Olympiad, does he ring a bell? Yes, philosopher. He was a very, very important thinker, philosopher of the 18th century, and the main representative of what we call the Scottish Englightment. People to not rely on the church to tell you what's right and what's wrong, but find a way to find morals within yourself. This was a revolutionary thought in the 18th century, and it was truly creating a revolution in the way people's minds were working at the time.
Hey, Control Trends community. This is Control Trends outside of Deacon Brodie's house. Deacon Brodie's one of the most interesting personalities in Scotland. By day, he was this great guy. He made the keys for everybody's locks. And by night, he was a robber wearing a mask. So what he did one time was got his band of merry criminals, and he made the locks for the National Treasury. He goes, they steal the money, they get caught. He escapes to Holland. He falls in love with one of his mistresses. He has to get back in touch. He's lonely. He writes her a letter. She turns him in for the reward. Now, they finally go to Holland, get him, they bring him back, and they hang him right here in front of his house. And this is where the mystery begins, because they don't know if he died because he's such a clever guy and so wealthy. They don't know if he paid somebody else. So they dig up his grave, and he's not there. There's no body to be found, so the rest is a mystery. But this created one of the most incredible legacy stories of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. By day, he's a nice guy. By night, he's a bandit. And then also Robert Louis Stevenson lived here, and he's one that wrote that. He also might have been the seed for all the incredible theater being done and all the stories being told, like the Hulk and all these guys that had, or women that had 2 characters, that by day and by night. And it was all come out of this little Deacon Brodie's corner.
Robert Louis Stevenson also wrote another book based on William Brodie, based on Deacon Brodie and his double life. He wrote The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm very sure you've all heard of that story. Jekyll and Hyde is a very, very revolutionary book. At the time, the first book to face this dual personality, and in turn, Jekyll and Hyde inspired many superheroes and their double lives. When we talk about the Hulk, okay, the Hulk, for example, would not exist if we wouldn't have had a William Brodie in Edinburgh.
So Kenny, what do you think of the tour so far?
I'm literally amazed, and we're going to make a correction at edit point that even though it has this authentically old, ancient look, it's actually been, there's some trickery that occurred, but it's 18th century, a lot of it. We went to the buildings of 16th century.
Yeah, we're going to walk through a street that this was the average size of the street back in the day, right?
Right, and they did some incredible things with architecture, all wooden. They had like 11 stories.
14 stories, wasn't it? It was unusual because they didn't have enough space, so they had to go up, right?
Right, and it was very rickety. It was made out of wood, and they had tremendous winds up here in Scotland, so it wasn't the ideal place to live. Here, the width is not even a big guy, NFL football player couldn't get through here, but extraordinary person. We knocked out. We have an adventure, an incredible tale-telling tour guide that's taken us through the most incredible place I've been to in quite a while.
Devoted to the lives and works of Robert Louis Stevenson, Robert Burns, and Walter Scott, three of Scotland's greatest heroes of all time, three writers. Out of the three, I'm sure Robert Louis Stevenson sounds the most familiar because he wrote Treasure Island. I really like Robert Louis Stevenson. He's very interesting. He was the son of a family of lighthouse makers, very famous Scottish lighthouse makers, and he was raised in a lighthouse looking at the sea, coming up with stories and adventures like Treasure Island. And then he spent his entire adult life sailing away from Scotland. He was a proud Scotsman, but the further the better, because the weather here was awful. He said that after traveling the seven seas, the vilest weather on earth could only be found in his hometown, Edinburgh. And he described Edinburgh's springtime, which is right now, as a meteorological purgatory.
And we're at Grassmarket Square. Before golf, the most popular sport in Edinburgh was executions. You pay for executions. All these places around here, they did a lot of them. But one of the stories, you can see Maggie Dixon's Tavern right behind me. And the story goes that she was a young woman that was married, didn't like her husband very much, wound up having an affair and getting pregnant with somebody else. So needless to say, she was prime for execution. It was one of the most popular executions they had. They brought her out, they hung her, they buried her. As they were shoveling dirt over the grave, there was a kicking around. They didn't know what was going on. They opened the casket. She goes, "My throat's a little bit sore." So they brought her back out. And so the story goes, there was a big debate. They're getting ready to hang her again. And wait a minute, somebody said, "Hey, if God gives you a second chance, who are we to deny it?" So they freed her. She got rid of the husband, got to marry the next guy, and lived happily ever after, opened a pub right behind us.
It reminds us of Hogwarts for several reasons. J.K. Rowling used to live a block away from here. She used to write at the Elephant House, where you can see the school. The school kind of does look like Hogwarts, especially, again, springtime blocks away, but if you lift the school up and you put it with your imagination on top of the castle rock, then you should get in your head something very close to the image of Hogwarts, especially when in August when they build the stage for the military tattoo. If you go to the castle esplanade, they're starting to build a metal structure. That metal structure becomes the stage of the military show that we have here in August, and it's so big it looks like a Quidditch field. It's like a massive stadium next to the castle. Also, the school mixes kids from two different backgrounds, which we see in Hogwarts, and the school has 4 houses and 4 towers, one for each house. And the houses are not Gryffindor, Slytherin, Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw, but they are Greyfriars, Lauriston Castle and Raven. 2 of them are close, right? And then J.K. Rowling made tons and tons of money, and for a few years she sent her child there. So that's why we call it Hogwarts.
All right, Kenny, man, tell our Control Trends community where we are.
Well, we're in the middle of Edinburgh at the Elephant House, where J.R. Rowling wrote or did a lot of the work for Harry Potter. It's a very inspiring place. It looks out over the cemetery, looks out over the school. It's Hogwarts. Just an amazing point on earth because she's still roaming around here. She, of course, went from rags to riches. She now owns a mansion somewhere walking distance from here, from what we understand.
Yeah, the story goes that she got married, had a kid, went off to Portugal with her husband, wound up coming back, divorced, single mom, no money. Apparently she had a brother that lived in Edinburgh, so much of the first book was written here in Edinburgh, and he gave her free coffee and free food, so there you go.
A writer's motivation right there.
Yep. All right, buddy. Big day in Edinburgh, man. Let's take it home. We'll get ready for day 2 tomorrow. I tell you what, man, the Scottish Enlightenment and what we're seeing in the controls industry, I see many parallels. What about you?
I do too, Eric. And again, it takes just a step back in time. You know, we went back in time 300, 400, 500 years and learned a little bit about the history. But the intelligence that came out of this area, the Renaissance that led into engineering, medicine, science, literature, made a big impact globally. And some of that is what we're feeling. We feel that reverberations where we sit in a society waiting for this intelligence to incubate, innovation to grow, and it leads to the next generation of what we're here to do, to make buildings more smart, more intelligent, and more connected.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're, hats off to EasyIO, man. I love these global conferences. We're seeing more people from the States that are coming. We can't speak highly enough about, the EasyIO Global Conference. You get to meet integrators from all around the world. And, man, you find out that we all have a lot of similarities. We can learn from each other, and it's great.
As we said at the Paris conference, if you remember, buildings are our common denominator, our common currency. The issues that we face every day in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Atlanta, Georgia, Paris, England, wherever, are basically how to make people how to make buildings and office areas and smart facilities for people, to make them happier, healthier, more productive. And you give these people that own these buildings bigger bang for the buck.
Well, I think so. And I think if you go to Europe, I mean, their energy prices are higher here. So in many ways, I think they're farther down the line in terms of energy conservation. So it's a great way to learn there. So listen, man, the man, the myth, the legend is going to have a little drink here, maybe a little Scottish whiskey.
I hope. Hey, whiskey without the E. They don't put an E. It's not EY here. It's just Y. Whiskey.
Yeah, if you got to put an E in your whiskey, it's not real whiskey. So check that out. All right, we'll check with you guys tomorrow. Until then, remember, be bold. Stay in control.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed, Kenny Smiles.